talk about Chicago Bears current quarterback Justin Fields. Who knows? Maybe by the end of the show, he's no longer the quarterback of the Chicago Bears. There are rumors floating out there today that a deal is in place, essentially, between Chicago and Atlanta for the Falcons to acquire Justin Fields. This is something that I have predicted even going back to November. I have told you this multiple times on the show when we were in this discussion. All of this talk about Justin Fields or Caleb Williams and Chicago should trade down and acquire more picks and build around Justin Fields. Chicago fans, if you're out there listening to me right now, if you trade away this generational prospect in Caleb Williams and keep Justin Fields because you want to get more picks and build around Justin Fields, this is why you've been a loser and haven't had a quarterback in 50, 60 damn years. Justin Fields is not a good quarterback. He's the fourth best quarterback in his division. He can't throw. He has a 60% completion percentage throughout his career. His stats dip from quarter one to quarter four every single game. He is a runner. He is not an NFL generational type quarterback. Caleb Williams is the next great quarterback in the National Football League. He is an overcomer. His losses in college, the least amount of points his defense gave up was 35. If you give Caleb Williams a defense and you give him some talent, which they do have, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, pretty good offensive line. They are ranked middle of the pack. Caleb Williams will make things work. Will he be great year one? No, probably not, because many rookies are not. However,
CJ Stroud was.
CJ Stroud was. He is the exception to the rule. With that being said, CJ Stroud, by the way, was also in a division with a hurting Anthony Richardson, a Trevor Lawrence who was battling injuries, a disaster in Tennessee. Caleb Williams is going to walk into a division with an ascending Jordan Love, an ascending Jared Goff, a very good Kirk Cousins, who I believe will stay in Minnesota with a very good Vikings team, who I think could be better than some people think next season. But would you rather, if you're the Bears, because I think there's a very good chance next year the Bears go 7-10. Let's put a baseline on that. Would you rather go 7-10 with a Justin Fields, who you're not sure about who your quarterback's going to be? Or would you rather be 7-10 with a generational quarterback on the rise with probably a new offensive head coach at that point, with a quarterback on a rookie deal, which you can load up money and go out and spend? This isn't complicated, Chicago. Don't be stupid. Get a second round pick for Justin Fields from Atlanta, who, by the way, in a weaker division, weaker conference, good weapons with that Atlanta team indoors, I think Justin Fields will do very well in Atlanta. I think Justin Fields could be Baker Mayfield-esque in Atlanta and lead that team to a division title. But Chicago's not the right fit, and you got to get over it. It just admit it.
So it's interesting that we're throwing out the term generational talent for Caleb Williams. I see what everybody is talking about. I certainly do. And I'm not advocating that the Bears should trade the number one pick and keep Justin Fields. But given what we've seen from Patrick Mahomes now, when we say generational talent, he's the one you get compared to. So, I feel like that's unfair to say generational talent.
Well, I'll say this. This is why I say he's a generational talent for two reasons.
Go.
Number one, many, and I mean many, of the best NFL college draft experts out there, Joe Klatt, Daniel Jeremiah, Lance Zierlein, they all say Caleb Williams is the best college prospect they have ever studied. That includes guys like Andrew Luck, who is a can't-miss prospect, and Trevor Lawrence, who I think has been maybe a little bit disappointing for the expectations, but also he was thrown into a disaster of a situation year one, so you can almost take that year out. Which, by the way, Caleb may be in a very similar situation. We'll see what the deal is with Eberflus and all that. The second reason is his former offensive coordinator, who is now the current offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, Cliff Kingsbury, who
And
coached,
that's why everybody's thinking maybe Washington should try and trade up
which
to the number 1
which
pick.
which the Bears are so stupid they would do it, and if I'm Washington, I would absolutely do it. The point being, that Cliff Kingsbury, who coached Patrick Mahomes in college, said this. He said, Caleb Williams is the closest thing to Patrick Mahomes he's ever seen, and he thought Caleb was a more refined and a better college quarterback than Mahomes was. We know what Mahomes has turned into thanks to a year where he got to sit, by the way, and learn under Andy Reid. There's the thought of Chicago keeping them both and Caleb sitting a year, which I don't think would do Justin Fields any favor because I think it would lower his draft stock or, his trade value.
Yeah.
I would not do that. I would rip the Band-Aid off. I would draft Caleb. You also have the 9th pick in the first round. You can use that on another receiver if you want. I would go sign a veteran backup quarterback, whether it's a Case Keenum or a Joe Flacco, somebody like that. Doesn't have to be a mobile guy, maybe Tyrod Taylor if you want to be a mobile guy, just to sort of help Caleb get him along, because I do think that matters. Patrick Mahomes had Alex Smith to teach him the ropes, a very veteran guy. I think that matters a lot. But Caleb, to me, we see this every year in the draft, right? People try to talk themselves out of picks. These scouts really don't know a lot. The draft is a crapshoot, but I think the people that just are saying Caleb Williams is going to be a bust, they don't like Caleb Williams. They're saying it because they just want to be that guy that's different.
Right. And I'm not one of those guys saying Caleb Williams is going to be a bust or anything like that. I'm just a little hesitant to say that he's a generational talent. That's all. Because of what we're seeing from Patrick Mahomes. Now, that's my only reason for not throw out the term generational talent. But I understand where everybody is coming from. In terms of Justin Fields, I hope he doesn't end up with Pittsburgh, because that would scare me a little bit.
For the record, I don't think he's going to, and I don't think it's a good fit. And by the way, we'll talk about this, I'm sure, as we get closer to free agency. I don't think Russell Wilson's a good fit for them either. You know what I think the Steelers are going to do? They shouldn't do. By the way, if I was Pittsburgh, I would move Kenny Pickett to my first-round pick and try to get one of these quarterbacks coming out of the draft, but they're not going to do it. You know what the Steelers are going to do? We have a great defense. We have a great culture. We can win next year with Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph in a quarterback competition. Yeah!
You are great.
Give me a break. The only reason why you guys made the playoffs this past year is because Joe Burrow got hurt. By the way, have you ever heard of him? I don't know. He's pretty freaking good. Okay, by the way, one quick note. Speaking of Joe Burrow, remember when the Cincinnati Bengals were an absolute tire fire and people thought Zach Taylor couldn't coach? And then, by the way, Joe Burrow, a year after he turns ACL, leads the Bengals to the Super Bowl. Folks, if you have a franchise quarterback, you win games. If you don't, you don't. Chicago, take Caleb Williams.
On quick, want to continue the Bengals discussion here super, super quick.
Super quick, because we got to move on.
Yes, I know. But did you hear the news about what they're doing at Paycor Stadium in terms of the turf?
I heard this. They're putting in the same turf as the MetLife Stadium turf.
Yes. What the hell are you doing, Bengals? Well, you have a franchise quarterback in Joe Burrow. Are you trying to get him killed?
Well,
no.
The Bengals are the Bengals. Speaking of the Bengals, they have a running back. His name is Joe Mixon. He's going to be on the market, we assume, this year, along with guys like Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley, DeAndre Swift potentially, a boatload of other running backs. Josh, this was one of, if not our first ever topic when we did a walkthrough of championship rings. We talked about the value of the running back position. Here we are again. And, there's some talk in Cleveland about, could our hometown Browns be trading Nick Chubb, which, by the way, I would do, but I think it's bullshit. They're not going to do it, but I would absolutely do it, as I've been advocating for the last 2 years. Nonetheless, everybody, they're so sad for these running backs. Oh my God. How many times do I have to tell you about the most overrated position in the history of football, known as the running back position? It was valuable in the 80s. It was valuable in the 90s. It was valuable in the mid 2000s. It ain't valuable anymore, folks. Kansas City drafted a running back in the first round. His name is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Guess what? 2 years later, he could barely get on the field because a seventh round running back took his job. I'm not saying running backs as a whole aren't valuable. I'm saying paying running backs when you have a superstar quarterback is not the smart move. Because you know what? Teams have very good running backs on their teams, usually teams that stink outside of San Francisco. And why can San Francisco keep Christian McCaffrey? Because they have Brock Purdy on such a cheap deal. It's why Indianapolis has Jonathan Taylor, because Anthony Richardson is on a cheap deal. Young quarterbacks need running backs. Veteran quarterbacks, your Patrick Mahomes, your Josh Allen, your Joe Burrows. A running game is nice. A great running back is not required, because those resources need to go into your receivers, your pass rush, your offensive line before you go into running back. If I was building a team, and I don't care how great the running back is, if I was building a team by position, I would go quarterback. Then I would probably go offensive line. Then I think it's really a debate between defensive line and receiver, 3-4 around there. Then I would go corner. Then probably I'd go safety. Then linebacker. And then maybe even kicker and punter before I get to the running back position. Matter of fact, I think kicker may be more important than safety and linebacker. I think kickers decide a lot of games in this league. So that's where I'm at when it comes to the running back position. I'm not changing my stance on it. If you can bring the guy back for a 1-year cheapy deal, that's fine. But unless I'm the Titans and I don't have a quarterback, or, name the team, the Giants, they're going to let Saquon Barkley go. They're probably going to try to get a running back in the draft or something like that. But that's a team like New England. They have Ramondre Stevenson. They could probably use another back because they're so bad at receiver.
Yes.
Washington now, obviously, they're going to have a young quarterback. They can get a running back. Atlanta, they're going to have a new quarterback. We think it's going to be Justin Fields. Bijan Robinson's affordable. Young quarterbacks can get a running back, but once they're on their second contract, I'm not paying them.
And I do hear you on that one. I totally do. The days of the bell cow running back are most definitely over, I would say. If you're going to have a running back on the roster, I think they need to be more of a hybrid where you can line them up at wide receiver on certain plays. You can line them up out of the backfield and have them be a pass catcher, or they can do their normal job, which is just taking the handoff and running for 5 or 6 yards. That's what I think the new style of running back is. Not being specifically designed to run the ball, if that makes sense. Being able to be a jack of all trades.
By the way, I'm not saying that running the ball isn't valuable. I love running the football. What I'm saying is paying one guy 15, 17 million to carry to be the lead back is just not doable in today's game. I would rather have 2 or 3 backs combined give me 1,000 yards. I think the Chargers.
That's what really helped your Eagles knock off the Patriots in Super Bowl 50.
Yes.
52, I think it was, right?
Yes. And by the way, I think the Chargers here are a perfect example, because there's a lot of smoke out there that they're going to go get Saquon Barkley. Greg Roman, the new OC, Jim Harbaugh, new head coach. We know they love to run the football. But if I was the Chargers, I already got rid of Austin Eckler because I'm not paying them big money. Why not go out? Obviously, there's two backs, Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum out of Michigan, who could both be there. There's plenty of other backs. Why not go out and draft two backs in the third or fourth round that cost you a fraction and will probably give you the same production that, let's say, Saquon Barkley would give you for $14 million? You could get for a couple $1,000,000.
Yeah, and that's fair. I've heard all kinds of reports that Derrick Henry is probably going to end up in Baltimore.
I've heard Dallas as well, which I think Derrick Henry wants Dallas. I don't know if Jerry Jones is going to want to pay him. I do think they'll move on from Tony Pollard. But Baltimore, that's another situation where they have gone for running back by committee. Obviously, Derrick Henry would make them even harder to defend. I'm not arguing that. But Derrick Henry also is a guy who needs great receivers. And Baltimore, as good as Lamar Jackson was passing the ball this year, he didn't have a lot of yards. So I don't know if Derrick Henry's the difference maker for them. Because I like Gus Edwards a lot. I think Derrick Henry would basically be a little bit of an upgrade over Gus Edwards. I think the combination of running back, if you have a bulldozer and then you have a speedster, sort of that 1-2 punch that Buffalo had a little bit, with James Cook and then Latavius Murray. I think that is sort of the formula where I'd want to go. But again, like for my Eagles, if DeAndre Swift were to come back on a cheap 1-year deal, I would welcome him back with open arms. I like the way DeAndre Swift runs, but I'm not paying him a massive 3-year contract.
Yeah, I mean, you saw what brought the Lions success this season was the play action pass with Jared Goff.
Well, and they had two quality backs that, by the way, they both were not paying. They got Montgomery cheap. I think it was just a 1-year deal. They got Montgomery, and then they drafted Gibbs. They sub out DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, who had great production for them, and they basically got the same production with two different backs.
Yeah, and I loved the pick of Jahmyr Gibbs for the Lions because, again, he's that hybrid back that I was describing before.
I gotta give the Lions credit because I did not like their draft at all initially. I didn't get the pick of Gibbs when I thought the secondary was a clear weakness on their team. I thought they should have went corner. I didn't like the pick of Lambert, who, as I just mentioned, the linebacker position has also been deteriorated, and both guys seemingly had huge contributions for them. So what do I know about drafting? Apparently, I know that Caleb Williams better than Justin Fields. That's about it.
And Sam Laporta was a great pick for the Lions.
The Lions nailed the draft. And this is the other thing. We remember when the Saints did this a couple years ago when they had Drew Brees still, and they were bad for a couple years, and they had that great 2017 draft. They got them Ranchek and Kamara and Lattimore. They got good very quickly. Seattle, your second favorite team, did this 2 years ago when they got, both tackles. They got the corner. They got Kenneth Walker all in one draft. Detroit did it last year. You can do it in the draft. It's just very hard to do.
Houston also did it. Remember?
Houston, yep, good point.
CJ Stroud, Will Anderson. I think that was the draft where they got Tank Dell, if I'm
Yeah, they got Tank Dell, CJ Stroud, Will Anderson. You're right as well.